Hey guys, so for today's video I wanted to talk about homeschooling, family subjects, and conflict resolution and the particulars that come into play when you are homeschooling multiple grades at once. Of course, there's an airplane right outside the window now, coming at you from my car studio again because I live at dance class. Anyway, so we had a couple of things happen this week that, you know, we have to skirt around or figure out, difficult situations that come into play when you're homeschooling multiple grades at once. And so I thought, let's chat about this. Not only do I have a couple things I'd like to share, but I'm sure there is a lot of wisdom here. If you are viewing this video, you know, may by chance be homeschooling multiple grades at once. And so I thought you could chime in the comments and help any moms who need a little bit of advice or some encouragement here. So do not hesitate to give your advice in the comments below. So I'm going to break this down a little bit. I'm going to talk about how I homeschool multiple grades at once. I'm going to talk about some of the conflict resolution, some of the ways that we deal with that, and then I also want to talk about the benefits and the beauty of homeschooling multiple grades at once and doing family subjects, because it is one of my absolute favorite parts of our homeschool. So first things first is how I do family subjects. I'm going to put a link up here to my family subject choices video, curriculum choices video, if you are interested in what subjects specifically we do as a family. But essentially the bulk of our homeschool is done as a family, with math and reading and things like that on grade level separate. But the way that I do this, and this is an idea that I learned from Simply Charlotte Mason, the way that I do this is I will read, say we're reading Story of the World. I'm going to use that because many of you are familiar with that, so that'd be the easiest for me to explain. Say we're reading Story of the World, then I'll go around and I'll ask each kid to do their narration. We'll start with the youngest, then we'll move up to the next grade. I'll say, you know, give me a little bit more, and then my oldest, I'll say, okay, now tell me something they didn't say, something along those lines. I just have a little bit of a lower expectation for my younger one, a little higher, and a little higher for my older ones. Occasionally we'll go backwards, and that's because maybe my kindergartner is anxious or thinks he's gonna get an answer wrong or something, and so we'll go backwards. But it is generally easier when I say, okay, Eli, tell me one thing about this, you know, and now I'm moving on to picture study, but tell me one thing you remember from this picture by Monet. And then I'll say, Jesse, okay, what else did you see? And then I'll say, Bella, say 3 things that they didn't say. So something along those lines. So that goes with all of our family subjects. Most of it is narration, oral narration back to me. Occasionally it's written narration for my older ones, oral narration for my younger one. A lot of the subjects like science, I read the same passage out of our textbook, and then my younger two have the junior notebooking journal. My older one has the you know, traditional notebooking journal, etc. So that's also an easy one to deal with, and on and on. So that's typically the how. It's just my expectation for the narration and for the work that I'm having them do gets a little higher with each grade. So that is the how I generally keep my kids on task doing family subjects. That just helps so much with doing multiple grades at once, is just to do family subjects, and it helps so much. Beyond that, for the other subjects, what I typically do is I'm always on. I'm always busy. I'll work with one child and then allow them time to play with a logic toy or do something useful with their time while I work with another child, which doesn't give me a lot of room for break. But me not taking a lot of breaks, one, keeps our homeschool, you know, generally done before lunchtime. I'll put a video up here for that as well, a recent video. But also keeps my kids on task, because if I'm oftentimes leaving the room, then not only am I having to pull back one child to work with them, but then the other kids are, you know, who knows what they'll get into or lose focus on. So it's always, you're always on task when you're doing multiple grades at once, but there is also benefit in that if you can be disciplined enough to do that, in the sense that, you know, you're getting things done and you're plugging along, and then there's benefit to you because maybe you'll be done sooner. So the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit of the messy stuff, the conflict resolution, the thing that makes people nervous about homeschooling, especially if you're starting your first year of homeschool with multiple grades, because most of us, or many of us, have had the the opportunity to start by homeschooling our oldest, and then as they age, we add the next one in. As they age, we add the next one in, which is a really great opportunity and a great way to like not jump in head first. But if you are starting homeschool now and your kids are older already, have no fear. It will be hard. Nobody's saying it's easy, but it's definitely worth working through some of these difficulties with multiple grades in order to get to the beautiful things. So the first thing I want to talk about is strong-willed children. My younger two, my toddler and my kindergartner, by far are my most strong-willed children, and lucky me, that means that I have been homeschooling for all of their lives, meaning that, you know, essentially since before Jesse even started kindergarten, I've been dealing with a strong-willed toddler just for years and years and years. And so that's difficult in and of itself. The other thing that I've weighed is the decision to put them in like a mom's morning out program or a preschool or something. And the reason that I've chosen not to, and many people do, I think there's at least half of the people I know who homeschool in my town do put their kids in a morning preschool, and I think that's awesome. The reason I'm not doing that for my kids is because my younger two are very strong-willed, and I foresee a very difficult kindergarten first grade year if my kids are not part of our family rhythm. So the reason that I've chosen to keep my younger ones at home as I'm homeschooling my older two is because I want my younger kids to just be a part of our typical routine, so that there's no shock factor when I pull them out of preschool and stick them in our homeschool and have high expectations. This way, you know, maybe they're playing with Play-Doh while we're doing morning basket, maybe they're singing some of our songs or doing some of our memory work with us, but it's kind of like that immersion of having them a part of our homeschool in the long run will make things a little bit easier for me. Next is the expectation of my older kids. I do have my notes here, just want to mention. So the next thing is my expectation of my older kids and my younger kids. And that's difficult because typically what I want to be doing is I want to say to my older kids, okay, you guys just, you know, let's just go through this again because Eli wants to go through it again. And that is actually one of the situations that arose this week, is that Eli thought he missed something, he wanted to go back through it. He was being 5, he was being disobedient, and so I wasn't willing to go back through it again because for my older kids' sake, I didn't want to have them waste their time in school going back and doing something at the demand of a 5-year-old. Every situation is different, but this is the situation I found us in this week in particular. So he's throwing a fit, he's throwing a big, big fit, and the easy way out for me in that situation is to be like, okay, Bella and Jesse, open it up, let's just sing that song again. Just ask them to do something, they're older, they'll understand, right? But on occasion, I don't feel like that's a fair solution for them, and I want to honor their time and their obedience as well, and not just allow their agreeable nature and, you know, or take advantage of their agreeable nature. And so on occasion, you do have to have a higher expectation of your younger students. And in this particular situation, Eli knew that he wasn't going to get his way. We didn't compromise, and he had the choice to then leave our schoolroom and not be a part of school that day, which has its own consequences beyond just not being in the room with us. Or he could get on board and do school with us. And yeah, that's typically not the traditional kindergarten experience, but neither is, you know, nothing really is traditional about homeschool. And so I have to let go of that school mentality that says, well, in kindergarten he would get 10 chances for this, and in 5th grade they would be expected to do this. And I have to let that go and just say, well, this isn't school, this is my family, and these are the inner workings of our family, and this is the expectation I have, and also honoring them and their time. So you have to let go of that school mentality, or at least I do, because that is the motivating force behind some of the decisions I make in wanting life to be fair for them according to the standard of public school, and that's just not the situation that I have found myself in. The other thing that helps avoid conflict is to have a really strong planning game. For me, that means I really have to be ahead of the crowd with having things prepared. I really like Let's Play School and the Reading Corner because those things help me have things prepared for my younger two in particular. There are some times when, you know, I don't want to expect Eli to sit through lengthy lessons, even though they are family subjects, so I will allow him to go play with a, you know, a preschool or kindergarten appropriate worksheet or toy. And so in order to have those things available and on hand, I have to be prepared, and I have to have had a strong planning game with options for everyone. Equally, I need to be able to have independent work for my older kids if I do have to resolve an issue with my younger child. And like I'm saying, that issue I had with Eli last week, yes, we worked it out. Yes, it turned into a beautiful story. Yes, everybody ended up happy at the end of the day, but a couple of times I had to take him and step outside so I could speak to him and discipline him without humiliating him in front of kids, which means that I was walking out of the room multiple times, and I didn't want Bella and Jesse to just be sitting there, so I had to have work available to give to them in that situation. And this is just the ins and outs of every family, so I know I'm not alone in the fact that sometimes kids just don't have good days. And I don't want my whole entire family to then be punished for the actions of one child. And I hate that I'm having to use Eli for this whole story, but this is basically the situation. He's not typically the one who would be causing problems, so just as long as you know that. The other thing, don't give in regularly in those situations, in those difficult conflict situations. It's so easy to just be like, fine, we'll redo that song, or fine, like, will you just like eat a cookie and we can get through this lesson, because that becomes the expectation. And as much as, you know, that would get the day moving more quickly and make things easier temporarily, long term it doesn't make things easier, and also it's not a helpful habit for you or for your kids to form. And so don't give in regularly. Equally, know when it's appropriate to give grace. There are times when it's like, okay, you know what? This is difficult. We can repeat this lesson. You didn't sleep well. You misunderstood me. You are feeling tired. You are starving. You're not feeling well. You missed this for whatever reason. Let's just go ahead and redo this. Guys, are you guys all okay singing this song again? And there are times for both. There are times to be, you know, stern about it, and there are times to give grace. So I don't want to just be like, well, don't give in and don't say yes and all these things, because there are always opportunities to get on their level and build your relationship with them through conflict. One of the situations that I have found myself in regarding my younger kids, because my oldest daughter has always been really great at reading, really eager to do her narrations, the thing that I've really had to deal with is just de-escalating the fear of the expectation. So again, particularly with my younger son, he'll get nervous about something, or he won't know the answers to something, and I have to tell him often, buddy, I'm so glad you're here for this lesson, and I am glad that you are listening to me read, but I don't need you to know everything that I'm asking Bella and Jesse to know. You're in kindergarten. Your only job right now is just to be here and to just enjoy what we're learning. It's not to be perfect. It's not to get good answers, and I don't expect you to have the same answers as the older kids. That de-escalation and removing that fear and lots of affirmation is so important, especially doing family subjects, and it doesn't matter what grade level. I'm not just speaking to the younger kids. Affirmation, because there's more opportunity for embarrassing situations, all giving answers around the table, all learning the same thing, but maybe some not understanding. Affirmation and de-escalation is super, super important. So I have 3 things that I want to say. It got dark really fast, by the way. I have 3 things that are just especially beautiful that I have picked up from doing family subjects over the years, and that is those 3 things I would really like to share with you. And I would really love, if you guys haven't had any advice to give or share in the meantime, go ahead and comment at least one beautiful thing that you've noticed about homeschooling multiple grades at once. But one of the things is just that our family time together, we get more of it by homeschooling together, you know, all around the table, talking about the beautiful things in life, talking about habits, talking about the Bible, talking about history, sharing their narrations with one another. It opens up really beautiful conversation, and I'm really looking forward to how this grows as my kids get older and older. And it just helps, like I'm talking about these conflicts, it helps see positive resolution. It helps the kids see how to work out problems, it helps the kids know when it's the appropriate time to say something and when it's the appropriate time to be merciful and graceful. So I just really like that it helps walk through relationships, even though you're just doing school subjects. The next thing is that it helps the younger kids kind of dip their toes and get their feet wet a little bit with some older subjects. I never in a million years put the expectation on Eli to learn all his states in kindergarten. But by listening to my older kids, he actually knows more than they do because his memory is pretty strong at his age. And so, as funny as it is, he's my #1 map drill kid, but that's just a part of being in our homeschool. Can he write every uppercase and lowercase letter of the alphabet? Not unless I coach him through some of them. But can he tell you 27 out of the 30 states that he's learned so far? Like that. So that's one of the other really great things. It's just that your younger kids learn and process and are capable of a lot more than you may give them credit for on occasion, and that's been a great thing for me. In preschool last year, he wanted to do his own history fair project with my older kids, and he nailed it. He learned a bunch about George Washington. He gave a presentation to the parents. I never would have asked Isabella or Jesse to do that at that age, but because he sits around our table, he felt ready, and he was. And then the last thing, which is my favorite thing, is that it allows your older kids to stay around for the baby subjects a little bit longer. So like I mentioned last week when I talked about 5 in a row, my older kids still sit at the table and still listen to 5 in a row and still on occasion want to do the little kid projects. And that's a beautiful thing for me as their mom, is that there's no rush to grow up, and when you're doing some subjects that are fun and use manipulatives, they're right there and they get to enjoy it without having to ask for it because maybe they're too embarrassed to say like, oh, I really want to read that Lift the Flat book, but because we're doing it with our younger kids, then the older kids get to be a part of it. So that's one of my absolute favorite things about doing family subjects and homeschooling multiple grades at once. So if anything stuck out to you, or if there's anything you want to share, please put those in the comments below. And again, if you don't necessarily have advice to share, I want to know what your favorite part of homeschooling multiple grades at once is, so we can start some positive conversation around it and not just fear. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.